Welcome to the Rudy Show. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Rudy Reyes. Look, I apologize for technical difficulties that were out of my control. Speaking of control, this is a seriously impactful, controlling show and ominously wacky. A week in sports politics and sports politics, not to mention a viable combination of both, as a part of week 3 in the NFL. Let's start with the NCAA. If you are Pitino, you should be ashamed of yourself, and when you start claiming ignorance or to be interpreted as you didn't know something you should have known, and he did. His just cause or just clause in direct relation to termination derived from the allegations, and if you wanted to pay players and their families, there was a legal way to go around that. Unfortunately, in direct relation to termination, you look at the legal statute for coaches such as Pitino, who himself just so happens to be the highest paid coach through 2016 and 2017. Welcome to the Rudy Show on the Two Life Stews Radio Network. This is Rudy Reyes. Good afternoon to everybody out there. Thank you for tuning in. This is going to be an interesting show. It is an hour long. I'm not going to spend too much time on Rick Pitino other than just what I'm about to talk about here. And what I mean by that is he could have easily paid them out of his own pocket unless this was an NCAA violation. So I look at this violation, I think to myself, okay, what is the inclusion point? What is the actual violation? Why did Louisville decide to part ways with Rick Pitino? And there's a lot of reasons behind that. Unless you were looking at version 6.1 for a termination for just cause, should have been called a just clause. The employer has the right to terminate this employment contract for just cause or impose other appropriate discipline in which each case is to such action. Employees shall be given 10 days prior written notice and opportunity to be heard. The term just cause with respect to employer's right to terminate this employment contract shall be understood to include all of the following. Now, the following, it's not you have readily available information that I have to me, but I will tell you this much. It was just a day ago, and I mean that literally just a day ago, when the FBI was making indiscriminate conversations in regards to this whole situation. Matter of fact, they acquired approval from the NCAA in relation to what they wanted to do, how they wanted to handle this, what they wanted to uncover from all of this. And certainly one of those things you could talk about is what were the recruitment processes involved in the school's men's basketball program. Look, Pitino's been fired, and rightfully so. Despite the wins he had helped this Louisville men's basketball team amass, now has lost his credibility. Ability to acquire another coaching job, of course, speaking of ability, or in his case, a disability of being able to understand right from wrong. When you look at this coaching job, he won't be able to get one in the NCAA. And at the cost of what? His own selfish needs? More wins? This fallout included Tom Jurich to be released as well, as he didn't want to fire Pitino. And look, if you're standing in the way of justice, you have every reason to be questioned in regards to, well, why not? Why are you disobeying what I'm asking you to do? Well, it's simple. He didn't want to fire him because perhaps he has something more to hide than you want to imagine. I don't want to imagine. It's not my responsibility to be his follow-up individual or his boss to find out what Tom Jurich did or did not have on Pitino, but because he didn't want to release Pitino, he in turn was released. And I think it sounds as if something more is amidst here, and even more fallout could be very well seen across the NCAA landscape. Look, bottom line is this. It's a very sad day for fans watching not only the university, who could very well receive sanctions in the recruiting system, or maybe because of the upper echelon decision and the agreed to investigation, and the fact that it was cooperative had everything to do with why they may not be sanctioned. But overall, bottom line, without this being blown out of proportion, this is a black eye to the NCAA collegiate recruitment system and the NCAA system overall. And it's a black eye. It's a black eye to the system. It's a black eye to all the other coaches out there who are certainly doing their absolute best in making sure that they're following instructions, they're following the rules, they're following every single aspect to their job, following it to a T. For those coaches out there that want to feel that they could bend the rules slightly or use some to their advantage, perhaps, or maybe even look at the system to be something of, let's just get away with it, or let's push the envelope to find out what it's going to take to get us to where we want to go. In either case, I think there's more to this entire story, and I don't mean just in Louisville, I mean the other 9 schools involved in this situation. But it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be released next in regards to this investigation, and several colleges are part of the investigation throughout the country. So this is going to be very interesting to watch and see what's going to happen, whose heads are going to roll, who will end up feeling the pinch of being faced with possibility of being suspended, and or who knows, there could be other ramifications involved in this. Biggest question is whether or not this will be taken seriously enough to make the sweeping changes in the NCAA system and to keep coaches in more of an ownership. And look, it's not the FBI's responsibility to make sure that these coaches are doing their job. It could be their bosses' close watch to make sure that these coaches don't get out of control, to make sure they are following the bylines, crossing their T's and dotting their I's. And in this case, I think there are too many zeros as a part of why Rick Pitino was fired from Louisville. So again, there's so much more to the story, and as soon as more developments come available, I will certainly talk about it, and possibly on another show. Well, let's jump into the NFL Week 3. I was trying to have a show yesterday. Technical difficulties surrounding that did not exactly do all that very well for me. But look, whether you truly watch the NFL in this past week, ending on Monday night, you either looked at Jake Elliott hitting a huge game-winning 61-yard field goal as a rookie to pin the New York Giants back to 0-3, or perhaps the Chicago Bears player practically stopping at the 1-yard line just to have the ball batted down at the 1, just to force the Bears to settle for 3 points prior to going into the half against the Steelers at Soldier Field, and even an overseas game where you thought it was going to be a walk in the park for the Baltimore Ravens because of the defensive efforts that they've been able to show up until losing 2 interior linemen as a part of their rotation. So when you lose guys like that, you find yourself in a situation where, you know, it's a next man up conversation. It's not a theory. We're going to put that theory into motion. It's about action. And unfortunately, it was not action that was taken by the Ravens. It was more of an action taken by the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was a complete opposite game. I called for this upset because I wanted Jacksonville to become more comfortable with having Blake Bortles under center. In addition to that, I wanted to make sure that Leonard Fournette knew his role, and of course, you really can't forget the unforeseen heroes, the ones who you didn't think were really there, but all of a sudden they decided to show up and make this a real game. So let's kind of look into this game a little bit further when we're looking at the Baltimore Ravens and Jacksonville Jaguars. This is Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show, and I said I had news. Well, not quite yet. I'm still working on that news. I always have irons in the fire, as they like to call. But as soon as those developments are available, I'll certainly let everybody know what those are. But look, some of the strangest and among on course type situation you didn't think was going to happen in football. There were some very uncommon things which occurred this weekend here in the States as well. And the first and not last odd thing to have happened early Sunday morning had been taking form at Wembley Stadium in London, as you see the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Jaguars. And I look at the promising start of Joe Flacco, and of course he's coming back from a hernia injury. I look at Joe Flacco and I think to myself, you know, there's no way a guy of this caliber who's been playing relatively well prior to the injury would end up being benched by their head coach. But again, 2 interceptions would certainly not be the good start that Flacco wanted to be in, as well as the Ravens overall. Of course, Steelers play at M&T October 1st. So we're going to see exactly what happens. Chef, Ravens, Jaguars. I don't either. Scott Lauterbach chiming in. Thank you so much for your chat. Feel free to chat. I'll respond vocally as my hands are more free to do other things and my mouth is on the microphone. So feel free to comment here and I'll comment vocally for you if that works out. So bottom line is this. When you look at 2 interceptions, throwing for 28 yards, completing 8 for 18, Ryan Mallett did not fare any better at all. He waltzed the incompletion dances. He went 6 for 9, only 36 yards. But to his credit, he did get a touchdown, but no interceptions. But what that ultimately means is that because you're one-dimensional, you're throwing the ball, you don't have a running game, and that's exactly what the Ravens do not have right now. The rushing attack was nullified with a lot of yards, but no points associated with those yards, and most know that the Ravens haven't had a strong running game, at least at this point in the season. And when you're one-dimensional, you have no diversity in your play calling, not to mention the defensive injuries for this team who would look so promising heading into this contest at 2-0. It just makes you really wonder where the Ravens at, tied with the Steelers in the AFC North for 2-1 records. So look, this game couldn't get any worse. The defense wasn't able to stop the running and air attack by Blake Bortles, Leonard Fournette, Mercedes Lewis, and company. And yes, I said Blake Bortles. Oh, I didn't stutter. It's Blake Bortles. And the reason why is Blake Bortles had 4 touchdowns thrown. Bortles went 2 for 21, 244 yards and 4 touchdowns. Something that Blake Bortles and everybody else, including myself, was really questioning as to whether or not Blake Bortles can get it done. He didn't look great in preseason. He had a lot of misreads. He didn't follow his progressions through. His checkdowns weren't quite there. So a lot of miscues for Blake Bortles. But the fact that he was able to get back on track while away from home, oddly enough, in another country, says a lot about his preparation, says a lot about him taking ownership and how he played in preseason. Could the Jaguars be onto something big here in an AFC South? They could very well be. Could the Jaguars be the team that Marone and Coughlin designed? It really makes you wonder exactly who the guy was going to be under center early on. Why Chet Henne had his capabilities, didn't really get a whole lot done, and was released. And then you see their backup quarterback getting some reps, getting some timing, gaining familiarity with the offense, making it look relatively easy, whereas the 2 quarterbacks prior weren't able to really get them into the red zone to make it a serious game. However, it looks as though Blake Bortles is on track, and I didn't know that Mercedes Lewis was still on the team. No offense, Mercedes, but I haven't exactly seen you become the explosive player that I know you have been. But what's interesting about Mercedes Lewis is that he ties Jimmy Smith for most touchdowns. Not bad. Not bad for a guy who's over 36 years old. But bottom line is this. If there was a winner and loser at Wembley Stadium in London, it was certainly the Jacksonville Jaguars, who managed to send a message to the rest of the AFC South by the score of 44-7. Yes, you heard me correctly. 44-7. To go over some individual numbers, Ryan Mallett, 6 for 9, 36 yards and a touchdown. Not a whole lot offensively. Collins had 82 yards. Tyreek West had 26 yards. But Blake Bortles, could be a comeback player conversation, would he not? He had 20 for 31, 244 yards and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, I would say so. It depends on whether or not he stays consistent. There's been pieces and bits of time where Blake Bortles was the guy who was drafted first overall, but now looked at least up until London, didn't have anybody convinced until that game actually transpired. Leonard Fournette certainly getting it done. 17 for 59, 3.5 yards on per touch, and 1 touchdown. Of course, Marquise Lee, 65 yards, Amada 65 yards, and Mercedes Lewis 62 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just makes you wonder what the Baltimore Ravens were trying to do in relation to preventing Mercedes Lewis from getting so open into that defensive backfield. Is he a mismatch? Possibly. He's well over 6'5" at 285, I think, or 265, excuse me. He's a big guy. He's huge. He's got great hands, great availability. He can certainly get out of somebody's way. I mean, if you had a corner who was 5'9", you couldn't get any more of a mismatch than that. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Jaguars decided to take him apart. And that's exactly what they did. Jaguars setting a tone early and often. That's exactly what you looked at when you were talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars at Wembley in London. So when you talk about a dominant defense, a somewhat dominant offensive efforts you've seen against the Dallas Cowboys, it makes you wonder as if those efforts had gone for null. When you look at the Denver Broncos and what they did not do against the Buffalo Bills, Tyrod Taylor picked on the defense of the Broncos, or at least up front, able to get out of the pocket, make plays happen. That's something Tyrod Taylor has done time and time again. He threw for 2 touchdowns, 24-26, 213 yards. Trevor Siemian went 20 for 40, 259 yards, but was held in check mostly by the Bills' defense up front. When you contain a quarterback who's not predominantly good at getting out of the pocket, you see him doing a lot of things on the interior, a lot of pressure up front, could force quarterback, any pocket passer. I don't care who it is, I don't care where you're from, but any pocket passer could feel the pressure up front, make those errant throws, and in turn pick six possibilities for the defense. So when you look at guys like Demaryius Thomas, where was he? Emmanuel Sanders, where was he? But I think the Bills did great in pass coverage, keeping those guys in such a way that disabled them from getting open. In other words, the coverage is great downfield. A lot of the short passing you've seen from Trevor Siemian, again, didn't match for much with no touchdowns, 259 yards. Are those great numbers? No. I mean, he did tons more than that, including 3 touchdowns to Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas against the Cowboys. So it just makes you wonder, where is this Broncos team? They are now 2-1. They are in the 3rd position in the AFC West behind the Oakland Raiders. And of course, what's more amazing than that than looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 3-0. We'll get into that game in just a moment. But we look at neither one of these wide receivers, in Sanders or Thomas, anything more than 100 yards receiving and no touchdowns. And I think the running game wasn't established early on by C.J. Anderson. One of the reasons why they weren't able to get behind anything. And of course, the NFL season is still, it's still in its infancy. I'm not going to say there are a bunch of teams other than the Atlanta Falcons, who are the other 3-0 team, making any massive moves. But when you look at the Denver Broncos, they're going to have to do some regrouping and do better defensive covering down the field. Make sure to get the pressure up front. I didn't see Von Miller get any sacks, and if he did, they were just pressures, and they weren't necessarily sacks. But I think with only 36 yards on the ground, Jamal Charles fared slightly better. He did get a touchdown with 56 yards and did okay. The Broncos didn't really find a way to hang around in this game and fall 26-16 on the road against the Bills. Going over some individual numbers, we talk about C.J. Anderson again, 8 for 36, 4.5 yards per carry. Demaryius Thomas, 98 yards. Emmanuel Sanders. So these are very modest numbers. I think that it was a battle of being on the road, not only for the Steelers, but for a lot of teams other than the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC at least. So whether or not you've seen Tyrod Taylor doing absolutely amazing things last year, I think he's feeling a rhythm. The Bills are now 2-1 in a very evenly matched AFC East, and it's odd for me to say that because predominantly I see the Patriots running the boards. Be 3-0, 4-0, things of that nature, but they lost their opener against the Kansas City Chiefs. So it really makes you wonder, is the AFC West the best division in football? And I think when you look at it, I think so. I really believe so. The most competitive division in football right now is the AFC West. Not taking anything away from the AFC East, but I mean, look at these guys. I mean, they're battling. There's 3-0, 2-1, 2-1, and then you have 0-3. Of course, that would be the Los Angeles Chargers falling into the hands of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think the AFC West is going to be a very interesting one. When both top teams heading into this past Sunday's matchup, we'll talk about Kansas City playing against the Los Angeles Chargers, for which they're very familiar with. I think it's the same old Phillip Rivers. I think it's the same old song and dance year in and year out from Phillip Rivers. I think it's time to move on for Phillip Rivers. If you're the Los Angeles Chargers, if you're ownership, you have to find a way to get a quarterback who makes better decisions when they need to be made on point. I think when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs among the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL, when you look at the Chiefs, this game against the LA Chargers at StubHub this past Sunday, there's been a lot of talk about it for some time now, and of course something that we were just talking about in how Phillip Rivers should have been shown the exit signs way long ago. This is a team not only trying to find a new home, but finding a new identity. Yes, granted, you look at Qualcomm holds probably about 55, 65,000 people. Now you're putting only a quarter of that in the StubHub Center at 26,000 for occupancy. I think Phillip Rivers should have been shown that exit sign a long time ago with a bouquet of flowers and a ticker tape parade being sent down and out to the pasture. Maybe find another NFL team to be on in a backup role, because Phillip Rivers doesn't deserve a starting role. I can tell you that right now. Because, and the reason why I say that is, as many times, good afternoon, Stephen, thank you for joining me here on the Rude Dog Show on the Two Life Stews Radio Network. I'm going to take a quick commercial break here in a moment, but I wanted to address this. There's been a lot of talk about Phillip Rivers. I'm not a fan of Phillip Rivers. I never have been a fan of Phillip Rivers. I've said before, he's a great guy, not a fan. I'm just not a fan. And I think old habits die hard for Rivers, throwing untimely interceptions, untimely throws, horrible quarterback play, and when you need him to be at the top of his game, he lets you down. Again, and again, and again. I think the Los Angeles Chargers really need to find a way to invest in a highly drafted quarterback in the 2018 NFL Draft. As far as offensive production, that wasn't really doing a whole lot. It was adding more salt to injury than anything else. They allowed one of the most young, talented and up-and-coming stars in Kareem Hunt to really exploit their run defense. Chargers did not have an answer for Kareem Hunt. That's the saddest part of all. When I look at this game, I think to myself, you need to stop a guy who's leading and rushing, who's a rookie in the NFL with Kareem Hunt. Biggest question is, can anybody stop Kareem Hunt? Especially with the play calls that are designed to get him out of the pocket with the wheels that he has, with the miles per hour that he has, with the escapability that he has. Somebody's got to be able to stop Kareem Hunt. And we're slowly going to find out who in the weeks to come. But, I mean, the saddest part about this is when you allow a guy like Kareem Hunt to exploit you on a run defense. I mean, a 69-yard touchdown late in the game to seal the win on the road. I think that's the most disparaging thing you could do if you're an NFL team and you're trying to stop a guy and a team who comes into your house who's perfect. And perfect still with 3 wins and no losses for the Kansas City Chiefs. What's interesting, I didn't see a whole lot of Travis Kelce. Maybe he was playing the silent role, considering the prior week was filled with penalties because he didn't know how to keep a seal on his thought process. Oh, well, the Chiefs win big, 24-10 over the Chargers. So, again, not a lot of surprise here with the Kansas City Chiefs getting it done. And again, one of the best-looking teams in the NFL. Some other records I want to talk about here on Week 3. You see the Buccaneers coming up short against the Vikings. In fact, 34-17. As you've seen, the Vikings go early and score often all over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Something about not getting it done. Mariota not looking very comfortable in the pocket, not able to get the ball off in the way that he likes to. Sometimes his throws are a little bit errant. He gets a little sidearm action where he's really trying to make something out of nothing. Unfortunately, it wasn't anything that they did to set the tone of this game. Minnesota certainly did just that. Vikings win 34-17. Of course, you see the New York Jets against the Miami Dolphins. It wasn't Jay Cutler's day, I can tell you this much. He didn't look very good in this matchup. A ton of completions. Just did not look very good. He didn't look like he did in the prior 2 games. Could him and Adam Gase need to have a regroup? The answer to that is yes. They certainly need to get a regroup going on there and getting it done. And they have a very unfavorable schedule moving forward for the Miami Dolphins. But, of course, Jets trying to stay alive. Again, because the AFC, because Tom Brady and the Patriots lost in the opener, makes this a very winnable division. How winnable is up to the New England Patriots, considering it's been their division up to this point. Let's look at the Falcons here. This game was probably one of the best games of the week. There are a lot of reasons why. You had Matthew Stafford, who's trying to come back from last week's loss, didn't look very good against the Falcons, even though he was scoring early and often. But you know what? You're right, Steven. Jay Cutler is too inconsistent. But I think everybody knew this was coming. I think the writing was on the wall for Jay Cutler when you're talking about where he is now in a progression and where he stands to be the difference maker, to be the one who takes ownership, the one to get it done, getting outside of the pocket, maybe throw it on the run. I know he's a pure pocket passer. I understand that. But when the game is on the line and you're down, three touches, you have to ask yourself, man, what am I doing right and what am I doing wrong and how do I correct it? They didn't make any corrections, and that's where they fell short. Biggest question is whether or not this simplified offense for Adam Gase and Jay Cutler would find him to be in very great company in regards to winning moving forward. They're also 2-1, Jets 1-2. But this Falcons game is just absolutely just horrible. Just horrible. You needed to win. Matthew Stafford needed to get the touches in. They were only shy by a touchdown to take the game, to win the game. And that's not something that's really acceptable. It's not acceptable for the Lions. They were at home. They have the advantage. Good afternoon, Kevin Colbert. Thank you for tuning in. You know what, Scott? I'm going to say this about Jay Cutler in Chicago. I believe that when you look at Jay Cutler, you get what you get. If he throws the incompletions, if he throws the interceptions, that's Jay Cutler. You're not going to get the best of the best out of Jay Cutler. Everybody wants to talk about how Jay Cutler was so great under Adam Gase in Chicago. Well, where's Adam Gase now? Is he still in Chicago? No. Why? Because he may not be very good himself. Oh, well. What a concept. What a concept. What a concept. This is Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show on the Two Life Stews Radio Network. I'll be right back. I need to run a commercial, so stay tuned.
How would you like to make the impossible possible? With professional and personal needs by Envision For You Concierge, with an array of services for you, the professional. So professional athletes, celebrities, VIP and corporate executives, Envision For You strives to assist with travel, hotel, luxury car service, dinner and show reservations, VIP services, as well as consumer relations. Envision For You also offers mobile services, as well as organic tanning, massage therapy, hair and makeup, men's grooming, fashion stylist, appointment setting, and more. Envision For You Concierge, with nationwide services 24/7. Envision For You will never hesitate to go the extra mile for your professional and personal needs. So call today, 323-300-4592, 323-300-4592, or visit online at envisionforyou.com.
Welcome back. This is Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show on the Two Life Stews Radio Network. We're going to jump into some Eagles talk because everybody wants to talk about how this whole situation between a rookie who could kick a 61-yard field goal attempt and others who could make a 20-yard attempt. So big difference between the two. And I think the wackiness continued not only from the lake, but spreading across into Chicago, because you were utterly mistaken that the wackiness has stopped with the Philadelphia Eagles, as you've seen with the Steelers, as the team was standing silently, but not in part, but in whole. Despite what one photo may suggest, the entire team was sitting inside of a little area. They weren't really sitting, they were actually standing. And so the only photo you've seen was of Alejandro Villanueva. Now, Villanueva, because of his heightened popularity, due to being the only one visible standing up, there's another photo. There are other photos suggesting and showing that the Steelers were in the Soldier Field tunnel, standing there while the national anthem was being played. Now, from what I know of the Steelers, this is not taken lightly. You don't sit during the national anthem. They did have Mike Munchak, Mike Tomlin, Todd Haley, and a couple of other people standing there on the sidelines preparing themselves for this game. And unfortunately, it was to their dismay. And I think there was a lot more distraction for the Steelers than basically anywhere else. And I honestly feel as though politics have no business in sports, just like church doesn't belong in state. And again, this is my opinion, this is my feeling, this is my show. I feel as though when you kneel for the national anthem, it's you're disrespecting the flag. You're disrespecting the people who came before you, who stood tall in front of adversity, who stood in front of whatever adversity faced their way. That's my personal feeling. That is not my professional feeling. My professional feeling is that if you're going to kneel, if you're going to protest, do it in another forum. Do it somewhere else. Not in the NFL. Not on a field. Not in front of 65, 70,000 people. Do that on your own time. Not on a time clock where owners are paying you to do it. Now, I understand owner solidarity. They want to get involved in the process. Jerry Jones did it Monday night with his team on a night where they felt they did what they had to do. And every team's going to respond in that way. And they're going to respond in the way that they want to. Nothing's to say, and I wouldn't even bother suggesting that I look at what President Trump had said as good at all. It was taken very horribly. No NFL player, not one that I've interviewed, was ever disrespectful. I mean, I don't live in a White House or anything, but I can tell you that all the guys that I've interviewed are all stand-up players. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has issues. Everybody takes up their own situation, and it's on their time. It's what they do. It's their situation. It's their life. If they're going to make mistakes like everybody else does, call it like it is. The racial divide is being created because people want to create it. So, on to better things. Well, at least somewhat better things. Look, this team waited to enter Soldier Field on Chicago to play the 0-2 Chicago Bears, and someone say, don't get in the way of a Cub and its dinner. The Bears were down early in this matchup, and despite the flurry of anti-Glennon talk in the weeks prior, Mike Glennon was on the field to show everyone that he wants to be that guy in Chicago, like someone you may have seen in Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers, perhaps. Making his mark offensively, his offensive line certainly did not help his cause with the miscues, penalties, and low snaps, and I think Glennon was a modest 15 for 22, over 120 yards passing, including a touchdown. But I credit Jordan Howard, and I'm going to talk about Jordan Howard for a minute. Why? Because he injured his right shoulder early on in the game. He pulled himself out at least 3 or 4 times, but wanted to find a way to make sure that he was able to contribute to the team, to do what he needed to do to the team. And so from a personal standpoint, that's exactly what he did. He managed to find his way overcoming those injuries and carry the rock 45 times for 197 yards, including 3 touchdowns, to a Steelers team that could not stop the run. And one of the reasons that is because he didn't get the pressure up front to a point to get to Mike Glennon in an early and often manner. Guys were out of position. To sound familiar, on the road, not very good. 2 and 3 for Mike Tomlin on the road, historically, at least up to this point. I think there were too many misfirings for a Steelers team who was pegged to have one of the best offenses in the NFL. Scott chimes in, says the coaches were out there, so should the players of the team. I think that they should have been out there like they were the past 2 games. I think that the Steelers tried to remove themselves from the issue, but really they injected themselves into the issue. And you're right. I'm going to stop right there before I actually read it. No, that's all right. No, and that's perfectly okay. I think that's one of the reasons why the Steelers misfired, is because they were too focused on one cause, which had every bit of reason to focus the attention on, the awareness to, and bring the awareness to. But again, we're talking about a game you're trying to win. I understand it's not all about the W's. It's about what you do off the field. But again, this is a protest you take off the field. I understand that this was a personal attack that they felt that Donald Trump had placed on them. I'm not going to speak for them, but from what I've seen, that's exactly what it is. A lot of players are finding this to be an insult to them, insult to what they're trying to accomplish on the field, off the field. So to them, it applied. It was completely applicable. And when you look at the Steelers, I think it was more of a situation where they either wanted to be there or they didn't want to be there. And unfortunately, I think that Ben Roethlisberger took ownership by saying, you know what, I didn't play very well. But he didn't take a stand on, you know what, maybe I should have communicated a little bit more with Alejandro Villanueva to tell him, say, look, man, I know you want to stand out in the clear wide open. Whether or not he knew that nobody was behind him, we may never know. I may as well just have Alejandro Villanueva call here on the show to take his side on it, so whether or not he knew they were even there. But I think you're right, and you definitely have something there, Scott, when you're talking about how they didn't want to be a part of it, but yet they wanted to put themselves in it because of the silence. You know what they say, less is more. In this situation, it definitely was, and it didn't work to their favor. And what really showcased this early on in this game is that Eli Rogers muffed the punt, giving a 7-0 lead to the Bears on that drive. Antonio Brown doing everything he could with over 100 receiving yards on just only 10 receptions, including a touchdown. Le'Veon Bell managing to fight his way to 37 yards, including a touchdown himself. And for all you fantasy players out there, you can play it. I'm too busy with reality to do so. But I think this is all it's very lethargic by the Steelers. It's not what they wanted to do. I'm sure they obviously, like any other team in the NFL, want to come out and engage and put themselves in a situation to win, putting themselves in field position to win literally and figuratively. It's position on the field. It's a battle of inches. That's what you do. That's what you incorporate what you're trying to do, which is win, which is own the line of scrimmage, which is taking care of everybody on that line. You know what, Scott, I don't want to take too much time on it, but I will answer that question. And I really look at this differently because I understand players' mindsets, and they're not all the same. They are very different. How they approach things are very different. What they do on the field, off the field are also very different. They're all designed to do one thing and one thing only as a unit, is to win. No, that's all right. Bottom line is this. Steelers focus too much on one issue to not handle the other. Again, if you want to protest off the field. Write him a letter. Call his office. Send a flare. Send a pigeon with a note attached. Do something that will get the attention of him. And again, there's more, this is an ongoing conversation, guys, and we could go around this all day long. But the bottom line is this. This is my opinion. This isn't fact. This is just my opinion strictly. The NFL was black-eyed by Donald Trump. Whether or not the NFL wants to admit it, whether or not anybody else wants to admit it, Donald Trump blackened the eye of the NFL. They didn't like that. And the best thing they could do is take out a bag of peas, spread them on the floor, and hoping that he trips over them. They sent their message the way that they could. They did what they had to. They did what they felt they needed to do. Owners were behind them. I've seen many posts by the Jets, the Giants, the Dolphins, the Seahawks. I just kept counting down over and over and over again. Well, 28 to go, 27 to go, 26 to go. And I think that it's just not. I don't think every team signed on to that. I know Dan Rudy the second had said something not even remotely on those lines, other than to say that we respect. That's okay, Kevin. You can disagree with this, completely up to you. Everybody has their opinion. But I think that when you look at the way teams respond, it's really about the result of that response. And what I mean by that is were they looking at getting positive publicity, negative publicity? I didn't think that in any way, shape, or form they're going to lose their sponsorships from whoever they have sponsors, whether it's Nike, let's not even talk about Adidas, Under Armour, or anybody else for that matter. So what that means to me is that they were staying in concert with what the NFL, the NFLPA, the players, and everybody else wanted to send a message to. I don't think it had anything to do with not standing for the national anthem. Everybody wants to show unity in their own way. Cowboys held arms. Steelers stayed in the tunnel. The Arizona Cardinals stood, locked in hand. The Raiders sat, the whole bench, except for maybe a few people, I think. And, of course, you've seen Derek Carr sitting on the bench praying, which probably would have been the smartest thing to do if you're going to take that type of position. However, this isn't about sitting or kneeling or standing or on your head or anything else. What this really boils down to is this. It's your preference, your right. You choose to protest in any way that you feel. I just don't think it was the right demographic. Yeah, okay, fine. So you're playing to a captive audience. Everybody's going to stand there. Everybody's going to listen on their TV sets or their radio or their apps or whatever that is. And they're going to sit there, they're going to watch it. You think they're going to kneel? Or stand? No. When I'm at home and I'm listening to the national anthem, I'm sitting on my couch. Should I be standing? Should I be sitting? It doesn't matter. I do it how I want to, but I don't have a captive audience. They do. So it's a bigger stage. I think it's a bigger way for them to get the message out, and whatever message they're trying to get out there, and again, very mixed signals from a variety of teams, a variety of players, is that we're not going to tolerate you calling us an SOB, and we're not going to handle it because that's not what the NFLPA is about. It's not what the NFL is about, and that's certainly not the message they sent 99.99% of the year, whether they're on the field or off the field. That's not the message they sent. President Trump was wrong, period. And you're right, it does bring everybody together. It's supposed to. There shouldn't be a divide. But what's really interesting is that all of that actually brought people together. I don't know that President Trump was thinking about that. I don't know what his thought process was or was not in regards to what he was saying, actually pulling people together in unity. But yes, it is a shame. I said what I had to say about the issue. I will not entertain it any further. I don't talk politics here on the show, but I have to. I absolutely have to. Why? Because it's what happened. I talk about the news, I talk about the reality of it, and that's the reality of it. It happened, and in a week's time, we may end up forgetting about it. Who knows? The way that we forget about things is that we could go on to the whole 9/11 conversation. What happened to the unity after that? I mean, it's out there, right? What happened to the American flags being sticking out somebody's house on their doorstep? Whatever happened to that? So there's unity because there's no flag showing? That's why I don't talk politics. And that's exactly where I was headed to right now. So let's talk about this Steelers game here, as it wasn't very good for the Steelers. When you have lots of miscues, you lose Ramon Foster. That offensive line meant that B.J. Finney would move over to guard, and Chris Hubbard did an okay job filling in for Ramon Foster. Not the best job because he got called for movement on the line, and of course that's never good. It takes you back 5 yards. I think the Steelers looked decent early on, especially with the interception by Ryan Shazier. And somehow the defense at times looked lost on coverage, and somehow you had a safety trying to come over and do a cornerback's job, which allowed the huge first down to be played to the wide receivers for Chicago or any other team for that matter in a general formation. But I think about what happens when they look lost in coverage and somehow you forgot about the deep threat that Glennon faces every time he's under center. I mean, did you not know that he could throw that ball? Was that not something aware to you? Did you not watch any film on what he did in Tampa Bay? But I think overall it was a trap game. I said it on Coach Lester's show on SB Nation Radio. I said it not once but twice. I also said that on Dorf on Sports, 1060 NBC Sports Radio in Arizona. And that's exactly what happened. It was a trap game. I think historically of how bad at times the Steelers looked on the road and how they looked under Tomlin historically, it just makes you wonder what type of correction. Of course, as I stated earlier, Ben Roethlisberger admitting on 93.7 The Fan that his play wasn't good, and of course, that amongst many other things is my opinion. When you look at this and keep it in perspective, and let's be realistic about this, I did not see Ben Roethlisberger trying to make the throws that I've seen him make time and time again. Is he the same quarterback? No. Does he want to win? Yes. How he goes about it is another story. And I haven't seen the dynamics. I haven't seen this exact end arounds. I didn't see anything relative. Look, I'm not saying he doesn't have weaponry because he does. The problem is that it's more about production. It's about production on the field. It's about productive play calling. If there's an end around, if there's serious play action, I didn't see a whole lot of that either. Wasn't sold very well. something about the play calling is also suspect here with less than desirable results. I mean, just call it what it is. Todd Haley needs to also be held accountable. But of course, you did not hear from Todd Haley. You only heard from Coach Tomlin. I understand this is a win situation and this is what you do to win, but it's really about a team win playing collectively. Ben Roethlisberger, 22 for 39, 235 yards and 1 touchdown. Le'Veon Bell, 15 carries, 61 yards and a touchdown. And then, of course, Ben Roethlisberger sacked on a myriad of occasions from a Jeff Fox defense that was really doing its best. I think it really put on its best, disabling Ben Roethlisberger and company from getting rid of that deep ball, making an impact when you only see 1 touchdown by Antonio Brown. You did see some short, scattered play from Juju Smith-Schuster with a little shovel pass on the inside. You know, he was 39 yards, but that's a very modest 39 yards. But what's really interesting, you look at the other numbers on the side. Jordan Howard, 23 carries, 138 yards, averaging 6 yards per carry. That means the Steelers were not able to stop that run at all. Bottom line. End of story. 6 yards per carry? There is no way. There is no way. You can't expect to be a team that knows how to have solid run defense with Alualu up in front. You have Javon Hargrave, who looked very good early on, getting pressure in the backfield, taking down Jordan Howard for a couple yard loss here and there. It wasn't anything seriously major, but the double-headed beast, something I'd seen out of Atlanta when you seen Atlanta running Freeman and Coleman. Cohen had no touchdowns, but 6.5 yards per carry. So 78 yards, 226 yards for both guys. That tells you there was no running defense whatsoever. That's horrible. The Steelers got gouged in that game with poor coverage. They weren't set up properly. And of course, Jordan Howard getting in the passing game at 26 yards in passing. So look, bottom line is this. When you talk about the Steelers facing the Baltimore Ravens, I think that you have a slightly better defense with the Steelers, but an okay offense. Whereas there's a better defense, but not very good offense for the Baltimore Ravens. So because these teams play so well, oh, absolutely, Todd Haley should have owned it and should have said something on a post-conference with Mike Tomlin. Look, Todd Haley and Ben Roethlisberger were not on the same page in that game at all. Ben has his own plays on his wrist, over 100+ plays on his wrist in an armband, probably about this size, being able to call all the plays that he wants to. The problem is that instead of taking, and I'm not going to say that the coverage wasn't good downfield by the Bears, because it was. But what's even more interesting is that the Steelers and Todd Haley and Ben Roethlisberger did not do a great job offensively calling a variety of plays that keep defenses honest. This did not keep the defense honest. The Chicago Bears sniffed every single play out because there was nothing exotic. There was nothing creative. It was flat. And I'm not a fan of flat play calls. You have a dynamic quarterback who wants to, whether or not win another Super Bowl, win another Lombardi, and have that conversation as well. He may or may not. I don't know. But I can tell you this, when I look at Ben Roethlisberger, he needs to step up his game. He needs to go for the 3rd and short. He needs to make sure, yes, you and Kelvin are both here. And thank you for the conversation, by the way. And, of course, Chad here, I've been too busy talking to this phone. Hopefully it's good. Yeah, and of course it's great football. Yes, you're right. Oh, you know what? I'll tell you. Let's talk about the Texans and Deshaun Watson for just a minute. Deshaun Watson sounds very, very good. He looks good. He has the ability to get out of the pocket. He scrambles. He makes good decisions. I'm worried about his accuracy. I'm worried about him being able to throw on the run and not getting hit in an untimely fashion, because now at that point he's a runner. So Deshaun Watson looks very, very good. Of course, that ninja chimes in and says, Rudy, everybody has a right to their own opinion, but the so-called freedom of the flag and anthem symbolize the very reason that they can protest. Freedom isn't about speech that makes you comfortable. It's about the speech that makes you uncomfortable. And he chimes in again. I don't think he blacked their eye. He just continued to show what a low-grade human being he is. Well, okay, so I said I didn't want to talk about it, right? I just want to make sure everybody understands. Okay, here's what it is. You're right. Everybody does have a right to their own opinion. But the freedom of the flag, the freedom of the press, the freedom for us to plead the fifth and not put ourselves in jeopardy is our choice. Is purely our choice. Nobody can make that for us. But it's about the speech that makes other people uncomfortable. That I don't know about. I think it's more than just speech. It's pinpointed accuracy. To say, this is you, this is me, we are here trying to live. We're here trying to eat. We're all trying to get ahead. We're all trying to do everything that we need to do to get ahead. And that's exactly what we're doing. He blackened his own eye. And he blackened the NFL's eye in the same exact thing. Same exact way. I won't comment about the other stuff because that's not my wheelhouse. I have no comment to that whatsoever. But going back to the Steelers game, again, creativity on the Steelers side of the ball offensively needs to be looked at. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be on point. There's a lot of differences, Kelvin, in regards to playing to win and playing to manage a game. This is more about trying to win the game and doing everything you need to do, have to do, must do it creatively, do it effectively, efficiently, and accurately. This was not the Steelers' game plan. They allowed the entire protest, as it were, to override what they were trying to do. I mean, in all honesty, you really want to hear the truth about it? They should have never had a football game after he said that. They should have boycotted the whole day and played all on Monday night or canceled their games altogether. If that's the case, I'd just talk about Major League Baseball and the matchups there, headed to the ALDS in the playoffs. Or the NLDS for that matter. AL, NLDS. I wouldn't even have this conversation about football. But the bottom line is this, is that it happened. We need to move on. We need to move forward. We need to be choosy with what we say, how we say it, what audience we say it in front of, and keep politics out of sports. This is Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show on the Two Lives Stews Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for their input. Well, hey, baseball's a reality. You guys need to tune in. I'm going to have a baseball show lined up here, Stolen Bases, on barnburner.ca. So tune in for that. That'll be a podcast. Yeah, I know. It's coming. Don't worry about that, Ninja. Don't worry about that at all. That game is coming. It's a busy day in sports, everybody. Well, thank you for tuning in. Feel free to chat with me on the Spreaker Room. I'm here, Facebook Live, and thank you for your input so far. Now, I've always said that politics and sports don't mix, and I'm still going to stick to that motto because they just don't. They just don't. Maybe back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but I think the biggest foot in the mouth here and the biggest punch to the gut or whatever narrative or analogy you want to use, it's really about how we feel about everybody else. We need to look at ourselves first and foremost. Who are we? What do we do? We are who we say we are. So whatever words that come out of our mouths, whether you're an NFL athlete, an NBA talent, a Major League Baseball star, a champion tennis player, a champion golfer, we are who we say we are. So don't put yourself in a situation where you're saying something you're going to regret later because you're going to regret it the minute you say it. We are who we say we are. I say who I am. Nobody can tell me who I am. I know who I am. And I know what I say represents who I am. So I take a stand on that. And with that, this is Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show, the Two Life Stews Radio Network. Stay tuned for tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss this. I'll have the Sean Merriman on the Rude Dog Show. We're going to talk about some NASCAR. We're going to talk about what he has going on right now outside of football. And, of course, he's always keeping himself prepared for a comeback. And I don't mean in the NFL. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a great show. We're going to have good times right here on the Rude Dog Show. And, of course, as news develops, you'll be the first ones to know because you're my audience. And I thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show on the Two Live Stews Radio Network. Make sure you stay tuned. I have it plastered already. It's on Instagram. Follow me there at the Rude Dog Show. Go to @RudeDogReyes on Twitter. Follow me. I love the engagement. I love conversing with everybody. I appreciate the input, the listenership. And go to the Rude Dog Show on Facebook and throw me a follow. I certainly want to hear what you think, your thoughts, opinions, and, of course, the podcast following after some editing work. And the video will be posted on the RudeDogShow.com. So make sure you stay tuned for that. It'll be posted. This is Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show on the Two Live Stews Radio Network. Thanks for tuning in.